How's everyone doing? This is Noah with the Life of the Zigs coming back at you with another video on how I built this custom built handrail for under $100. So let's get started. Alright, so the first step here is pull out that table saw and hook up your appropriate dust collection system. After those tools are out, you can start to make your cuts. I chose to use a piece of oak handrail, which was actually from the basement steps when we first moved in. I just chose to reuse it as it saved me money and time. When it came to cutting the oak handrail, my saw just barely was tall enough to cut through it. As you can see here, I'm kind of almost pulling it through the saw, which it ended up working out. However, if you have a taller table saw, it would work out better. When it came to this other side, I was able to get a little more fine adjustment, so it just barely caught the edge of that, and then I could just sand the rest of it down once I finished cutting it. When it came to sanding, I chose to use my Ryobi orbital sander with 120 grit sandpaper. I just went back and forth smoothing out those rough edges because that saw definitely created a rough edge. It was so rough that I chose to go with an 80 grit sandpaper because it was so rough that there was almost 1/8 of an inch differences in the wood. The 80 grit worked really good to get everything down, and then I actually ended up coming back with 120 grit and smoothing it all out. When it came to removing the stain from the edges I did not cut down, I used a 40 grit sandpaper, which ripped that stain right off, and then again came back with a 120 grit sandpaper. Smooth it out nice and smooth, as that is what the stain calls for, and it just adheres really nicely when you get a nice good sand to the wood, as I've done it where I haven't sanded before, and it just doesn't have that color and depth and texture to it that it does when you sand it. Now moving on to routing the edges, I chose to use a 3/8 round over bit as it gave it that nice smooth feeling going up and down the railing. I just put it in my Ryobi router, which works great. You can check out my other video I have on it on YouTube. Once that router was all set up and the depth was selected, I clamped down my piece of wood to my sawhorses, as you're going to get some play in your wood if you don't clamp it down or have it mounted to something. Routing the edges was really easy. It just pushed the bit into the wood and start pulling away. Gave it that nice smooth crisp edge, which then after I did all 4 sides, I came back and sanded the whole thing down again with 220 grit sandpaper and created that nice smooth finish. Once that sanding's done, it's time to move on to the staining. I chose to use the Minwax Wood Effects in Charred Black look. I've used this on a lot of other projects, and this product works really well. You just brush it on with a synthetic brush and let it dry for 30 to 60 minutes, and then once it's done drying, you can start to put your top coat on. This product is available on Amazon or at Lowe's, and I'll make sure to link it down in the description below so that you can use it as well. After letting that dry for about an hour, sand it back down again with 220 grit sandpaper. I used my orbital sander for this, which again is a great tool to have for these woodworking projects, and it's very cheap to get, especially this Ryobi battery powered one. For the top coat, I chose to use the Minwax polyacrylic crystal clear top coat in clear gloss. I've talked about this product before. They make it in satin, semi-gloss, matte, ultra flat, and of course gloss, which is what I'm using here. Use a fully synthetic brush it on there, let it dry for about 2 hours, and you're going to repeat that process 2 other times. Sometimes I've actually done it 3 other times to get a really glossy coat, but it all depends on what you want to do. After that second coat dries, I always sand it down to get any imperfections out, and then put that third coat on, or even that fourth coat, and that really creates that nice fine glossy look, which is what I personally want to achieve. They do recommend on the can that you sand it between every coat. I have not ever done that. I feel like I don't need to. However, if you do that, your coat will probably be a little bit more smooth. However, I like it to be a little rough and a little textured, just to add a little bit more grip and depth to the project itself. Alright, so now it's the next day and it is time to install this handrail. The hardware I'm using is off Amazon. I'll link it down in the description below. I really like this hardware as it's a modern look and very functional as well, as you can see here. It came with 4 pieces, however I only used 3, and I may end up using that 4th one later on for another handrail I may do. Now it's time to start mounting up those brackets. So always try to put it on a stud These holes are not really center. You got one in the center and then one to the left, one to the right. So just make sure one of those holes is on a stud, and then you can use drywall anchors for the rest, which is what I chose to do. But when it came to the height of the brackets, it's 36 inches is the requirement from what I read online. So I just made it 36 inches above the stair tread. I just held that bracket up there, marked out the holes, leveled them out, screwed in the 2 drywall anchors, and like I said, that third one is going to go directly into the stud, which there is a metal stud. Once that's done, screw that bracket in and obviously make sure that it's level. Once you do that, you're just going to repeat the same exact process for the top bracket and for another bracket if you choose to use 3 of them. So now that the 2 brackets are up, I'm going to put the handrail in place, which is extremely easy. You bring the handrail in, you set it on your brackets, and take the 2 little set screws that are provided, and you screw it into the bottom of each of them. I started with 1 screw at the bottom, then went up to the top of the handrail, put 2 more in there, and then came back down to the bottom and did the last one. After those set screws were in place, I chose to add 1 more bracket right in the center. So take your tape measure, measure it out, find the center. Once that's done, you're going to take your bracket and line it up, mark out where the holes need to be. Obviously drill it all out and mount it. It so happened to be that this was all wood right there, as it was the transition from the first floor to the basement, so I didn't have to put any drywall anchors in, which was nice. Once that's mounted, there was a slight bow in the wood going in, so I actually used this mount to correct that bow by pulling it out a hair and then putting the screws in while I had it pulling out, so it was nice and straight. Once those set screws are in place, don't forget to clean up your mess. I just took my vacuum and cleaned up the stair treads real quick and wiped everything down. Once that's done, your project is complete. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned a lot as I did through this whole process. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, share your opinions. How do you think I did? Do you think I could have changed something? Could have done something better? Did I meet all the code requirements for this? Guys, I'm always looking forward to your feedback as it helps myself and helps other viewers. With that being said, I hope you guys all enjoyed this video and can't wait to catch you in the next one. Have a good rest of your day, guys.